Hello, hello, hello. Happy early Sunday morning. It is 1 a.m. And, I'm up. I took a nice little Saturday Sabbath nap, and those are the best. I'm telling you, God's day of rest is on point. I don't know why anybody would not prioritize Sabbath day for real. But, anyways, I've been doing my studies and just trying, like I said, I've been trying to get myself centered with God and just trying to move with the Spirit. And, I ponder a lot, and I say that a lot in my videos. I ponder a lot, and I I've been thinking a lot about just this conflict of man and the conflict of the spirit, and even just the notion of Lucifer, Satan, the devil, and then the fallen angels and their conflict with men, right? And I've said this before in videos that, when we look at the world today, right, we see a lot of supremacy, a lot of narcissism, and really this is a reflection of what is going on in the spirit world in many degrees. And if you're not a believer, then this conversation is probably not going to resonate too much to you. But if you are, it could be a perspective for you to ponder. So when you go back and beyond the canonical text, right, we have, other texts that have been omitted from the Bible, like the book of Enoch. And I do truly believe that the book of Enoch was the first book of the Bible. It makes sense on different levels for me because, number one, Enoch was so in tune with God that he was deemed to be a friend to God. And Enoch consequently was the first fleshly man in at least the biblical history of mankind that was converted from flesh to spirit. Now, this is important for a couple of reasons because, number one, Enoch highlights, this conflict between the creation of God's fleshly sons, which is us, the humans, right? And his first creation of sons, which are the angels or the spiritual sons. And he highlights this, and it was important for this piece of the biblical history to be, at least considered because it talks about the conflict between God's fleshly sons and his spiritual sons. And, I often say, it sucks to be a human, right? Because a lot of factors in our history were really beyond our control. It was like a little younger sibling dealing with, sort of the consequences of an older sibling. And in our case, it would be the older siblings being the spiritual sons or the angels, right? But when you really think about the conflict of the spiritual sons, some of them, right? The conflict that Lucifer specifically, the light bearer or the, you know, basically the son, the first son, if you will. His issue was that, when Michael, the chief angel, and this is in Enoch, told the spiritual creations that, look, God has created these fleshly sons, and we need to exalt these fleshly sons, right? We need to praise them, right? That was a conflict for Lucifer and some of the other angels because in their minds, they were superior to us. So there goes that superior or supremacist conflict, right? And when you think about even the conflict of light and dark, angels are considered obviously beings of light, right? And when you think about mankind, we are in the flesh, we are darker, right? And we can get into the evolution of the lighter human beings. in mankind's histories, and you're really going to see, sort of genetic mutation happening there. And obviously, these mutations were inspirations of demons, like so many things against nature at the hands of man. Is there are people on this earth that, through incantations, they entreat these fallen angels, the angels that fell, and they gain knowledge. They you got to think about it. Satan and the fallen angels, they have been on this earth longer than any generation of man, and so they understand us. They understand how we work. They understand the reoccurring patterns of our behaviors and mindsets, and that's why truly there is nothing new under the sun. And I say this to say that when you really think about, the conflict of Satan's and the angels, of them feeling like they were supreme to us, obviously, and obviously the other angels were listening to this dialogue, and that's why a third of the angels fell, because they're like, why would we worship these weak, fleshly beings? And it gives a lot of perspective, right? Because then we go and I'm just fast forwarding a little bit to that conflict that they had. Why should we worship them? They should be worshiping us. So it's not necessarily so much that Satan and the fallen angels wanted the worship that belonged to God. That was a part of it. It was really that they felt like mankind, human beings, should be worshiping them. They should be praising them. And that was their conflict, in addition to the fact that God created us, unlike how he created them. He created us more like him. And how did he create us more like him? Angels cannot procreate. They can't create legacies and generations, right? They weren't created for that. And so what angels, the fallen angels, the rebellious angels had to do is they had to create their own legacies. They had to sort of steal that right. And that's why some of them, when they were able to do that, took on the form of man, and they began to have relations with men. So they took on human form, and they began to have relations with the daughters of the earth to produce these unholy offsprings, because again, there's a divine balance to everything, and flesh and spirit, it just, they don't, we're not supposed to have those types of relations. And so they decided to break the divine balance, take on the form of man, and essentially they created unholy offsprings. And these unholy offsprings were not just human giants. These were also in the form of animals like dinosaurs and dragons. And if archaeologists, obviously, they are paid to suppress a lot of things from people because it would prove the Bible accurate about mankind's history. The Bible is the most accurate document of mankind's history. And every time these scientists want to act like they just, oh God, we just discovered something new, it's like somebody already knew it, buddy. It's just been suppressed, and now it's being brought out into the open. But there are fossils of abnormally large humans. There are fossils of dinosaurs and even dragons. And what is very interesting is that when you think about the discovery of most dinosaur fossils between the United States and China, they have the most, which is interesting because I truly do believe that any type of Nephilim, right? Because again, they were committing bestiality too. They were trying to create legacies on all fronts. Anything that could produce on earth, they were defiling it to create their own legacies and offsprings. And so when you think about China, China has a huge connection with the dragon, right? They have a huge connection with the dragon. And there's a variety of different reasons for that, I'm sure, in their culture. But I'm pretty sure because it's probably in China where you're finding more of the dragon-esque fossils of the Nephilim. But people tend to claim that Nephilim exist today, and they were not. When you read the accounts and you understand with discernment, you see that this is an ability to take on the form of man and create offspring that they were stripped of, after the flood, during the war and the flood of Noah's day, and they were not able to do that anymore. But there are ways in which these fallen angels have been able to, through the works of man, of course, to materialize themselves. And so when you're talking about different technological advancements, they have learned how to materialize themselves in various different ways. When you think about, different occultist type scientific groups like CERN, where they can't even do science without satanic ritual, you kind of understand new ways in which the fallen angels with their leader Lucifer are trying to materialize themselves. But I say this to say that I was sitting here thinking about why Jesus sacrificed his life, and even just Jesus in general. And, one of the pushbacks that I have about Jesus' sacrifice being all about mankind is that really Jesus was a perfect man, right? He was a perfect man, and yes, he was buying what Adam, who was also a perfect man, lost. But really, he was a perfect man that was brought down to this earth to sort of sacrifice his perfect life for mankind. So that our sins can be blotted out or forgiven, so that we can have penance for sin. And the more I think about it, the more I truly believe that it was more to it than that. I truly do believe that Jesus, the man in the flesh, was not the symbol that we as fleshly humans needed to focus on. I truly do believe that Yahusha, or Yeshua, which is the Hebrew translation for Jesus' name, when you look at what Yahusha means, right? Yahusha means Yah saves. Okay? His earthly name means Yah saves, means that God saves. Michael, the name Michael, means who is like God. And when you think about Jesus' sacrifice, it wasn't about Yahusha's sacrifice was what it was. It was really about Michael's sacrifice, the Archangel Michael. Michael abandoned his flesh, his spiritual body, his spiritual form. Michael the Archangel, the one who is like God, he abandoned his spiritual form to take on the form of fleshly men, so that he would be lower to our level, so that he would be down to our level. He would live a human experience like us. And when you think about it, that sacrifice was not just for man. It was a demonstration to the fallen angels. It was a demonstration to Satan and the fallen angels that the highest angel that was created would lower himself to fleshly men and take on the form of man and even be persecuted by other men. That is the ultimate sacrifice. And it wasn't about just God giving his son. When you think about Abraham and Isaac in that situation, Isaac wasn't afraid. He wasn't resistant. Isaac helped his father with the sacrifice of himself. Isaac helped his father with the sacrifice of himself. Read the account. He was 100% on board. And it was hurtful to Abraham's heart to want to have to sacrifice his only son. Remember, Abraham and Sarah, they did not have children in their union, right? That's why he had to go out and get the concubine, right? So to have your firstborn son and have to sacrifice that son, it's hurtful. It's hard. And obviously he didn't do that, right? But there was a number of reasons why Abraham had to do that, and it was symbolic for mankind. So for us to understand that I am sacrificing from Yahuah's, God's perspective, I am sacrificing something that my beloved, the one that's most like me. And I often, and I ask for clarity all the time, I often wonder which one was created first. Which one was created first? Was it Satan? Or I'm sorry, was it Lucifer? Or was it Michael? Was it Lucifer or Michael? And I gotta believe that it might have been Michael created first, because he's the highest chief angel. But regardless, I truly do believe that Yahusha, Jesus in English, his sacrifice was well beyond mankind. His sacrifice really was to, because really he said, I came to this earth to make disciples, right? He came to this earth to make disciples, right? That was his mission, to teach mankind how to live in union with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and to help them to teach others to do the same thing, because obviously the nation of Israel was a big failure, right? So that was his mission, because obviously if there was no example of a nation, because Israel wanted to be like everybody else, then he needed his son to be that example. but it was beyond just an example for us and to teach us how to live in covenant with God's laws and standards. It was really an example and a demonstration to significantly lower angels, that a higher angel like Michael, the chief archangel, the beloved Son of God, truly, he's like God. He's like God. And if God is allowing it to be written that he is like God, that makes him a God. And so that is just to say that I truly do believe that Michael the Archangel, the Son of God in heaven, he is the one that took on the earthly form as Yahusha or Jesus. And it was for beyond helping mankind to blot out their sinful inclinations and understand the way in which to live in covenant with God's standards and laws, you know? So let me know what you guys think. I'm just going through and just reasoning on the scriptures a little bit and just kind of understanding these conflicts, not just from mankind's perspective, but also from the angels' perspective, the ones in grace and not of grace. And I think, me, I always look at things from a broader lens. So, anyways, you guys have a wonderful, wonderful morning when you wake up. And, like I said, I'm up. So I'll probably try to go back to sleep, get some tea, and go back to sleep soon. But I had a nap like really late in the day. And so it's like, I'm kind of up. But, anyways, you guys have a wonderful morning and day. And I will catch you on the next one. Bye.